Welcome. I'm Mara Yale. I lead this educational series as an organizer. I'm going to share some intro slides as we continue to welcome people to the session. So this topic, as you know, is about summer camps, and it's really a summer camp fair for how we think about, as parents and professionals, encouraging kids to be active in the summer for their development as well as for childcare and fun. This is part of an ongoing educational series. As all of us with experience in this population know, typically there's some kind of acute event or diagnosis after some period of time. And stroke in infancy or childhood can affect the whole lifespan. So we try to offer educational events that support the growth and development of children and families throughout their lifespan. We like to remind you that this is educational. And when we get to the period of time where we're asking questions, try to keep the questions general and conceptual and not so personal. If you have questions about your own child or your own situation, we request that you go to your healthcare team for those questions. We're super proud of what we've built over the last 5 years, building community through education. And as you can see, we've delivered almost 40 sessions. Some of them have been viewed as many as 1,500 times. We bring in an international audience. I know Francesca's brought some of the Italians today. And we have speakers that partner with us from many different hospitals and other community organizations. We've also started sharing this model of patient and family education at conferences. The QR code here, and we'll link also from the chat, allows you to register for other upcoming events. So just to give you the rundown of what's coming this spring, as you know, today is summer camps. Next month is about training high school athletes and coaches from a strength and conditioning perspective. In March, we're revisiting cortical visual impairment with 2 case studies. We'll have an in-person event for those in the Boston or New England area on May 11th. And we will focus on language development on May 17th. So again, there's the link to register for any of those, and I will also put it in the chat. Let me hand it off to Bonnie, who's going to be our moderator today. Take it away, Bonnie.
Thank you, Mara. Good morning, everyone. We're glad that you could join us today. And as Mara mentioned, this is a webinar about summer camps. We will be hearing from parent panelists who will be sharing their experiences in their process for looking for and engaging with summer camp, a variety of summer camp experiences for their children. So we, just as we're interested in hearing everyone's experience, we do have a full roster of parent panelists, and so we want each one of them to respect the allotted time as much as they can so that we can hear from everyone. And they can share their family story. We will leave time for questions at the end, but please feel free to drop your question in the chat. We'll be monitoring that and can include that once the panelists have done speaking, or if you're more comfortable, once the panelists are done, you can just come off mute, raise your hand, use the raise your hand feature, and then we'll go accordingly and you can come off of mute. And then just, again, we put it in the chat, but for anyone who isn't speaking, if you can stay muted, that way background noise won't distract the parent panelists, and we can keep the recording clean. So take it away, Mary. It's now up to you.
Sounds great. And thanks so much for having me. So my name's Mary Dubon. I'm a physiatrist or physical medicine and rehabilitation physician trained in pediatric rehab medicine and pediatric sports medicine. So if we can go to my next slide there, or my slide, I was asked to speak about physical activity in medical specialty camps. So that's an area that's near and dear to my heart as someone who takes care of kids with all different medical diagnoses that affect day to day as a pediatric rehab doctor, but also somebody that is a pediatric sports medicine doctor talking about physical activity and sports and involvement. And I work a lot with that overlap population of trying to get kids active and, kids who have different medical diagnoses. Making sure that we're getting them active in a way that's fun. And medical specialty camps can actually be a really good way for that. We kind of joined forces recently with a couple people here today on writing a little opinion paper on this topic because there's not been a whole lot in the literature on it. But what prompted the idea was that I got into medicine because I worked at a medical specialty camp when I was in high school. And I worked with at a camp for kids with children and adults with developmental disabilities. And it's such a great opportunity. It was great experience for me as a high school kid, but it was a great experience for the campers. Everyone had a good time. Everyone was exhausted by the end of the day in a good way. And I think that kind of highlights the fact that we think so much of camp as social, and it is, and that part is really important. But I think sometimes we forget about the fact that it's actually in my opinion, good for physical activity too. Like I said, there's not been so much data and research on this area that we can definitively say, oh yes, camps, increase physical activity during camps and, after camp, if they try to physical activity during camp and they stick with it. We don't have enough evidence to really say that at this point. I'm going to highlight some of the studies that are out there just to give you a sense. But I think it's more at this point anecdotal. But just another thing to think about is that even the activities that, are not necessarily gym type exercises or like sports type exercises still are involving walking around. Camp, usually you're walking or rolling or moving around in some way to get to point A to point B. And you're also, doing things like even cooking activities can be using your body in a physically active way. So there was one pedometer study that was out there that showed us that campers got over 10,000 steps per day during day camp and almost 20,000 steps per day on average for overnight camp. This was a study that was not done in medical specialty camps. I will give that disclaimer with it. This was in a general camp. So I'm not sure how that number would be if it was in a medical specialty camp, but that still goes to show that even though camp isn't necessarily always thought of as a sport or a physical activity, it is something that it is an opportunity that can increase physical activity. We think. Campers at medical specialty camps in a couple of studies have noted that they feel less judged, so they're more willing to try other activities that they might feel less comfortable trying when they're in a more general setting. They feel, there was a note in one of the studies that someone felt like when they're in the general population that people have to wait around for them because it might take them a longer time to walk from point A to point B. But at camp, it's different. It's camp, everyone understands and everybody, gives the campers the opportunity and gives each other the opportunity that they need. And so they feel like they have that freedom to be a bit more physically active and try things without feeling self-conscious about it. Another study of campers with developmental disabilities actually looked at more objective data of their physical activity, and all the activities that they did had some sort of aerobic activity involved, even cooking, which I thought was an important one to think about because we don't often think of that as a physical activity, but you're standing, you're mixing, you're doing various things that are active in some way rather than obviously just sitting and not engaging any of your muscles. And then in a study of campers with visual impairments who participated in an adaptive sports camp, this camp showed that all of the activities pretty much were really active. So this one was a sporting camp, and the kids really were getting their moderate to vigorous physical activity component through camp. Another study of children and adolescents with physical disabilities showed that there were higher levels of that moderate to vigorous physical activity, that more intense aerobic activity that we want people to be having at least a few times a week during camp compared to pre-camp. So they actually looked at what their activity levels were before camp, and they said, yeah, when they were in this adaptive sports camp, they were more active than they normally are. But unfortunately for this study, at least, they followed the months after, and it wasn't sustained. So there's still obviously more work to be done to see how much camp can help with physical activity, how much it can stick. But that's some of the information that's out there that I wanted to share.
Thanks, Mary. I think I'm next. My name is Gretchen Murphy. I'm the mom to Owen, whose two pictures are here on the screen. He's an 8-year-old third grader. I'm starting because we looked into regular camps. We live in Norfolk, Massachusetts. My husband and I are both full-time working parents. So obviously summer camp can be stressful because we need full-time coverage throughout the summer. So when we started to look at camps when he became age eligible, there were 4 major areas that we were considering for Owen. One is that he was able to attend with the friends that he was making in school. We're in the Norfolk public school system. Also outdoor activities with sports. He's a nonstop mover and loves sports. So that was important to us. Important to me with swimming. I'm a lifelong swimmer, and we've been working with Owen with swimming since he was born. So swimming was important to us. And also, lastly, he does have CP and wears an AFO. So we needed a camp that would be AFO or brace friendly. We found a local camp in our town, or the town next to us, at the Adirondack Club. They offer sports camp, they offer adventure camp, arts camp, and that worked really well for my son. So he's been attending that camp for the last couple of years and is looking forward to this year. And one of the things that I recommend is look into camps early. On January 1st, Adirondack reached out saying that camp registration was open. So we're in the process of finalizing what all of those weeks of summer will look like. We also did a town flag football camp. And this is what I wanted to talk to you about today, because sometimes I take for granted that everybody knows what an AFO is and how Owen uses it. Well, day 2 of football camp, I got a call from the head of camp that the AFO had broken at camp. And he asked if he could just tape it back together and put it back on his leg. So for any of you that have children that wear an AFO or a brace on their leg, that is not something that you could do that even be safe for him if the AFO broke. So he went through the rest of the camp without the brace, but the recommendation I have is that don't take for granted any of those camps. Make sure that you're talking to the instructors and they realize why your child may need an adaptive device and what to do in case an incident could happen. Like I just didn't, that wasn't something I thought of. But anyway, that's been our experience. He's been thriving and highly recommend looking at camps now.
Hi there. So now I'm coming on as a panelist. I have kids who are a little older than the other parent panelists on the session. This picture on the top right is from last summer. So they're now both teenagers and counselors in training. The sequence of the top 3 pictures is actually from the same camp, or from them in front of, the first 2 are from them in front of our house heading off to Drumlin Farm Camp, which is a camp run by Massachusetts Audubon Society. It's a nature-based camp. And both of my kids started there when they were 4 or 5 years old. And I just want to show the sequence of 3 photos because of the longevity of this camp. They've gone every summer. And my kids are now 14 and a half and 17. So we tried a variety of camps when my kids were younger, a mix of day camps and sleepaway camps, camps that introduced variety, novelty, social connections. We tried nature camps, arts, both visual arts and musical theater, sports. And for me, logistical simplicity was really important. I'm a single parent, and I needed one drop off and one pickup as often as possible. of course, as my kids got older, not every week was one drop off and one pickup, but fortunately, they both love Drumlin Farm and asked to go back year after year. The other photos that I'm showing are, first I'll go to the bottom right. You're going to see this picture again from Francesca, who's our last panelist. When Echo was 9, Echo's my 14-year-old who had a stroke at birth. And when Echo was 9, we had an opportunity to travel to Italy to attend a camp. And I think of it like our family was one of 2 families from the US serving as ambassadors to this camp. That was, the rest were Italian kids, but each child had a one-on-one tutor. And Echo's tutor, Echo happens to also be bilingual with Spanish. So Echo had a tutor who was trilingual with Spanish, English, and Italian. And it really allowed Echo to integrate with the rest of the kids in this camp. That was a day when Adam Sandler happened to visit the park where the camp was happening. So that was like a completely different experience. We lived in an apartment in Milan for the week and a half that camp was happening. This photo on the bottom left is Echo last summer at CP soccer camp. So I want to highlight CP soccer because it's been Echo's, I would say, favorite sleepaway camp the last 3 summers, and they're planning to go for their 4th summer. And it's a 5-night camp near Lake George, New York, open to kids 10 and up who have any interest in playing soccer. And it's for kids who've had stroke, have cerebral palsy, or have had traumatic brain injury. There's a phenomenal social emotional component as well as opportunities to play soccer at quite a high level or recreationally. It's very inclusive. We've also run, and both Echo and I helped run a day camp for CP soccer in Queens, New York last summer, along with Brian Wishart, who's on here as a physiatrist, and Catherine Dimitropoulou, who's at Columbia University. That and the camp in Italy were both research-based camps. So one of the advantages of participating in research-based camps is the camps themselves have typically no tuition because there's a research component. I want to speak last to funding. So it's expensive to go to camp. And one of the ways that that's been accessible to my family is by looking for flexibility and options. So for example, the Mass Audubon camps offer a sliding scale for tuition based on what your family can contribute. And it's actually gotten easier to get that financial aid in recent years than it used to be. For CP soccer camp in this year and last year, my family was able to apply for a grant from Challenged Athletes Foundation, and I'll post the link for this, that covered the camp tuition plus travel to get to the camp. And CP soccer also offers tuition waivers to families that need that with really simple justification. So I think that's it, and I'm going to pass it to Jordan.
Hi there, I'm Jordan. We're in Newton, Massachusetts, right outside of Boston. And so we have a 3rd grader and a 10-year-old sister and 2 cats, and our grandparents live with us. So we have an unusually flexible situation because my parents have dedicated, their days, when they're not enjoying retirement and traveling, but really dedicated their days to supporting our family. So with that in mind, with the flexibility, I kind of have thought about our 12 weeks during the summer as like the beginning and the end, right after school, right beginning of school, like a little bit of a break, family vacation. nothing time, and kind of that fat middle, like the 6 weeks, more of the camp time. And when Orion was younger, let's say maybe 3 to 6, I really like stuffed summer with high fiber PTOT intensives, speech, reading to, stuff like that. And I think that it's certainly like so much motor gain. He's been through 7 rounds of CIMT 2-week constraint, 2 rounds of PT intensives. Those were 2 weeks each. So many motoric gains, but really, really hard work. And increasingly, especially as elementary school is hard, and he is in an inclusive classroom where he's one of only a couple of kids with an IEP. It's exhausting. It is really hard already. And I think more of the summer ought to be more like of a break. And also an opportunity, because he is in an inclusive general education setting, exposure to other kids who maybe like kids with hemiplegia. So to that end, cerebral palsy soccer camp in New York was really, really eye-opening for him to be among other kids, ranging 7 or 8 to 15, 16, who also have hemiplegia. So hopefully going forward, we're, trying to involve him more agency in terms of what kind of camps he wants to go to, and also more opportunities to be with other kids who have hemiplegia, or a different social environment. So on the extended school year, which is what public schools call if you qualify for what the school gives, we've done that every summer. And in the early years, like 3 to 6 through the early childhood program, I would say that was a pretty good fit, because early childhood is mostly inclusive. So there are typically developing peers and kids with special needs. And my daughter went there as a, typically developing peer. Older, was a little bit harder of a fit. When he transitioned to his elementary school, the elementary school team didn't really know him, because he was transitioning from a private school, and they did their very best, but they put him in a program that was then, a couple weeks in, clearly for less functional kids with a lot of other involvement. And the teacher said that to me, but you can't really do anything about it. It's like kind of midsummer. And then the subsequent 2 summers, he was in a program that, at least in our city, like the labels are not very clear, like I think intentionally for a lot of reasons. But it turns out, and I had this thought when I met other parents, and he did have some positives from it, each summer made one social connection. I was like, I think this program is mainly for kids on the spectrum. And then our MGH stroke clinic neuropsych program had an education person, and the person went to go observe. I said, I really don't know whether it's a fit. And she confirmed right away. She said, yep, he doesn't have spectrum, but I think because hemiplegia is so less common, the team thinks he has like a social issue, when he actually has more of a communication issue. He's like more expressive, social negotiation, stuff like that. He's not in really the right program. Doesn't mean he can't get something out of it, but like half of it is not really a good fit. And that was also corroborated by what he would tell us about, the summer camp, where even when there were positive experiences, like having a good friendship and stuff like that, he would call it rules camp, and complained that his older sister got to go to like fun camp. They got to swim in the, city lake and do arts and crafts and wash cars and like all the summer camp stuff. So she says, I don't want to go to rules camp. And, that's something to keep in mind when you're thinking about ESY. And the timing is also something that's tricky, and every district is different. So I'm only talking about my experience in our own district. So the timing for our district is like, I think the team evaluates whether the kid might qualify based on data of regression from vacation. So the teams kind of starts talking about it in January. in March, they give you a letter, whether you qualify or not. Then you have to decide end of March. So that timing doesn't really work out if a lot of camps you have to sign up for in January and December. So that's also something tricky. The other camps, what ended up being a really good fit was, so I mentioned CP soccer camp, and it's just really amazing to be with other kids and, you know, a team, Dr. Wishart, Mara, Dr. Catherine, who really know the kids' neurology. That was like the first time where I was like, wow, this is like a staff and approach that really understands like the neurology of hemiplegia. The town inclusive camp ended up being a really good fit. He's going to return there this summer, and my daughter was also there too, and that was the fun camp that he referred to. And I had found out about that camp because I keep my ears to the ground really closely on our town's special education parent advisory council, like email threads. So sign up for your CPAC. So Google your city or town name, SEPEPAC, CPAC, and it'll come up, and sign up for their newsletter. And I heard that this camp was great for siblings, for typically developing, for non. It was just like great leadership, great culture. I won't go into detail about the other camps. I'm happy to take questions. Swim camp, rock band, tennis, all of those came with like sailing, all of those came with a thought of like, I had to talk to the owners in advance, talk to the person who'd be running it, to let them know the lay of the land, hear whether they feel like it would be a good fit. And then it was really trial and error. And we also used the summer to have like maybe one trip, like he went on a trip with his dad for a long weekend, which was so special. And then I got to have time with his sister, which was very special. And usually I'm the one who's accompanying him to therapy, and I don't have as much time with his sister. So.
Hi, I am mom to Roman, pictured here, 9-year-old stroke thriver. So Roman had a stroke at birth, and we live in Boston, in North End in Boston, Mass. And I am a single mom to Roman and his 5-year-old sister, Rio. And I think my thoughts around summer camp this year have shifted a bit from last year's thoughts. So developmentally, Roman, from a social and emotional perspective, has had a challenging year. And I provide this context because I think it's important thinking about where your child is emotionally relative to their differences. So Roman has a few learning disabilities, ADHD, and right hand weakness. So there are definitely tasks and different sports that can be challenging for him. And all of this plays into his confidence and how he's thinking and feeling about himself and his body. So in thinking about camp, my thoughts were around outdoor focused camps, uninhibited space, variety. So thinking about variety so that Roman isn't in a basketball focused camp only or a baseball focused camp only, because if there are points during the day where he's tired because he's been challenged to work his right hand more and it becomes upsetting, I wanted him to have variety so that he could maybe pull back in an event that was just a little bit harder for him and find something that maybe came a bit more natural to him. He loves art, he loves music. And just give him an opportunity to also have free play time. And theme days are another really nice way to focus on inclusion. On the right here, it was a cowboy themed day. So the hat and the little handkerchief is just a really nice way to include everyone. And a fun theme day is really just a different feeling in camp. And with that inclusive practice, so a camp that is accepting through both nurturing and structured activity, promoting personal growth. So confidence in their body is definitely something that is really important to our family, is supporting Roman in the way that he's feeling. In particular this year, as I mentioned, 4th grade has been a year of discovery. So he's had the most dialogue around his stroke and how he feels in his body. You know, as my oldest child, I haven't experienced this before. So I've really been listening to him and think about that when I sign him up for camps. And last summer he attended a camp, Cedardale Summer Camp, which builds social skills and confidence through fun programs. So swimming, which is not his strength, and he doesn't always love it, and he doesn't always feel as safe and confident in the water, but tennis, batting cages, mini golf, arts and crafts. There was free play. There were theme days, like I said, pictured here, and he very much enjoyed the variety and was able to really embrace and enjoy the experience at camp. And to Gretchen's point, I already have my notes and around camp and opportunities for Roman this summer. And one of those is Brooks Day School Camp, which is a beautiful campus. They have over 200 acres. And they really are attuned to their campers, focusing on social and emotional growth, challenging them both in what is hard and easy, because it gives them the opportunity and it shapes them as they approach new challenges and the willingness to take them on. So it's definitely been a really important consideration as I schedule him for the summer. I am also a single working mom, so need the support of summer camp. And also it's an exciting time for them, but very much wanted him in an environment with the most variety so that he is able to feel the most confident in his body as he's sort of navigating the feelings and really accepting his differences. So these are just some of the considerations around summer camp for our family.
Hello, my name is Kim Hendry, and I have an 8-year-old named Abby. I also have an older daughter. She's 10, named Adabelle. But Abby is my one who has right-sided hemiplegia, and I will second what Leslie just said, which is taking into account the social emotional needs of your child, because Abby really struggles with that. She needs a lot of help with regulating her emotions, and so that is definitely something that we first and foremost take into consideration when it comes to camps. Like Jordan, we really focused, gosh, when she was 2 to 6 as well, we were traveling constantly to camps and really trying to utilize that time when she was growing significantly and trying to get her the best support that we could get her in the time that we had. So we were really looking at intensity and frequency because the research really supports that in making motor improvements. So I was really focused on that. So oftentimes the camps that we would do would be a month long and they would be all day. And so that was tricky. We didn't have a lot of those near us. So we oftentimes traveled, and to make that affordable, a lot of times we would stay at a Ronald McDonald House, which was really wonderful and helped with the cost of food and just anything that you need when you're out and about or traveling. So that was really amazing. I would say some of the most beneficial camps were ones that involved other children. So we loved the Camp Helping Hands in New Jersey. We actually stayed at the Ronald McDonald House, but it was quite the drive from the Ronald McDonald House to the camp. Abby just slept literally all the way home from that camp every single day. But that was a CIMT camp, and she learned so much. And what I loved about that camp as well is that they had you make goals for your child that were functional goals. So some of the kids had goals like riding a bike or learning how to cook or put their hair in a ponytail or something like that, that really would help with their everyday activities. And they were oftentimes things that they had seen their peers doing that they wanted to do, but just couldn't figure out a way to do it. So they would help them either gain the strength or the muscle movement to do it, or give them adaptive tools to help them. So I really loved that camp a lot. We only did it the one summer because 1, it was very costly, and 2, it was away from home for a month. So that gets to be tricky. We have also done 3 different clinical trials in Columbus. So one was with other kiddos and the other 2 were just one-on-one. So we did the clinical trial Champs and Baby Champs in Columbus. Again, we stayed at the Ronald McDonald House for those. We have been to Columbus so many times that now the staff there at the Ronald McDonald House knows us, and they're so excited to see Abby as we go back there every year, and they've seen her kind of grow up, and that's been kind of an extension to our family, which has been really cool. We've also traveled to Walk This Way. So Abby had a selective dorsal rhizotomy when she was 3 years old, and it was Walk This Way was actually one of the recommended therapies for a few months after that. So we did end up going to Texas for that. And then there's another therapy that we went to, Crossway Pediatric Therapy, that was it was more therapeutic, but with other children. So it wasn't as focused on, I mean, it had fun activities and things like that, but it was, I would say, more therapeutic than Camp Helping Hands. Camp Helping Hands was a lot more functional, I would say. And so some of the things that I really look for now, and some of the things that Abby does now, are CP soccer. We love CP soccer near us, and our local hospital also teams with some of the colleges around us. And so there are different programs, like there's an Iron Core program where she goes every single week and will do like strengthening, but it's with other children as well. And I always find that when she's with other children that are like her, she's really motivated to continue the activities, and she's motivated to like help the other children if they're struggling. So it's a way for her to kind of step into a leadership role occasionally, but then also get support herself in the areas where she needs to grow and she needs to develop. But one of, I would say recently, as I'm looking to this summer and the activities for her, I'm looking for people who can help with her emotional regulation. And if there is a time where she gets frustrated, they can manage that. I will say that, you know, going to a camp with typically developing children sometimes, you know, not all the counselors are well versed in how to deal with some of these challenges. And some are much better about it. It just depends. So that is definitely something to keep in mind, and something to, you know, ask about, inquire about when you're looking at camps. And on to the next.
Hello, everyone, and thanks for inviting me here today. I'm Francesca. I'm the co-founder of Fight the Stroke Foundation, and I'm based in Italy. So I'll tell you my own experience, which comes with my son, Mario, who was born, and actually 10 days after his birth, we discovered that he suffered a perinatal stroke. So he's an ME kid with a left hemiplegia. He's now 13 years old, and during the years, especially at the very beginning, we were looking for trials or other opportunities, even abroad, out of Italy, in order to find rehabilitation opportunities for Mario. Actually, in Italy at that time, there were no, the camp modality was not so popular. And we also suffer the fact that children with disability during the summer have a long summer period out of school, like kind of 3 months. And normal, typical camp offered by the town or offered by the school are not accepting children with disability. So moved by these and by our own experience trying different type of camps around the world, especially in US. So I'm thinking about those at Columbia University and back to 2011, so many years ago. And one in Spain. When we came back to Italy, we decided that it was time for us to pilot a new way to have also a camp in Italy. We called them Fight Camp, and actually the first edition in 2018, the one that Mara was mentioning before, the correct name was Mirable, because it was based on the action observation treatment and the fact that kids could learn by each other, by imitation learning. Then in the following years, we piloted a model that is the model that we are having so far. And our camp are more based on sport and rehab. They're kind of research camp. So let's say they're very strict in terms of rules, in terms of hours of activity. And in terms of methodology, I would say, even if the people that are running the camp are not, they are therapists, but they are not doctors. So even on this, we know that we have some rules that we need to follow, but oftentimes we collect data, but we are not able to publish the data. So in the latest year, we had the chance to try different type of sports. We tried more than 20 sports, even collaborating with the Italian Paralympic Committee. All of them are adaptive sports and are made in order to let the children experience all bimanual activities. Children have one-on-one tutoring, and our tutor, as Mara was mentioning, mostly of them are able to speak Italian, English, Spanish. So we are really willing to host people from abroad, because we think that's a good chance for our children also to learn our experience. So during this 13 years of life with Mario, we understood that intensity and variety, as many of you mentioned, are a great chance for our children to grow and to thrive. So this is what we are offering. Also because during this camp, we have a recurring rate of children who wants to come back year after year. So we wanted to offer them something special every new year. About our special edition, well, last year we had 2 editions, one in Milan, and then we decided to go to the CP soccer camp in US, and this was a great experience for us too. And the year before, we decided to we won a kind of grant, and we have been hosted on a boat, an ancient boat, with all the marine military staff. So the boat was all for us, and we were traveling all around the coast in Italy. And this also was a great experience because apart from balancing on a rolling boat, it was a chance to create a more homogeneous group, because otherwise our camps are more our daily camp. So even if they are not costly for the children, so we are not asking for any kind of fee. Families are traveling, they are coming from different parts of Italy or from abroad, so they need to find a place to stay in Milan during the summer, and they need to find, so apart from lodging, food, and have to find a budget for traveling. I just would add that it's a great chance. Some of you mentioned before that for me it's a great chance, even running a camp or going with Mario to other countries for attending a camp, a great chance for a family vacation. So I also getting feedback from our family, the fact that it's in the middle of August and in Milan, which is always a very active city, but during this week it's almost empty. It's a chance for the family to live a new experience altogether. So next time will be from the 12th or to the 18th of August, and happy to answer to any other question. Mara, I'm not sure if I need to, oh, Bonnie.
Hi there. Yes, thank you, Francesca. Thank you to all the panelists for sharing your experiences. Really, we got to hear kind of a range of methods for, finding, a camp, whether or not that was local or international, so across the spectrum. So we now have some time for question and answers. I did want to mention, you probably have already seen, there are resources listed in the chat. Mara has this link here as well too. Maybe, and then if you have a question as well too, and you'd like to ask it yourself, feel free to raise your hand and come off mute when you're called. But in the meantime, I will kind of start from the beginning, reading through some of the questions that were posed. There was one that came to me directly. So I don't know that anybody else had seen it, but it was regarding CP soccer. And it says, do kids that use AFOs who can't run participate in CP soccer? I did share a little bit of the information off of the CP soccer website that mentions that children should be ambulatory. But Mara, I didn't know if there was any unique circumstances related to the clinical trial associated with CP soccer, so maybe you could answer that.
Sure, okay, so the clinical trial, we did have 2 kids who needed some assistance. One child used a frame walker and was able to participate with his walker. And another child needed someone one-on-one with him. And we actually ended up getting a gait belt so that the other adult who was helping him stay upright and stay balanced could use that, because it was an older child who was 11 or 12 and got hard on the assistants' backs. But the general guidance for because I also run the CP Soccer New England team, the general screening that we do when a kid is considering CP Soccer is that we ensure that the child is ambulatory. If there are special considerations, it's worth a conversation either with Ashley Hammond, who's the head coach of CP Soccer, or with your local regional coordinator, or with Dr. Wishart or Dr. Dimitropoulou.
Yeah, I would definitely, I live in Cincinnati and my daughter does CP soccer, and we have kids who are even in wheelchairs that they accommodate and try to find a way to, allow them to participate, especially where I live. It has been beneficial because it's not just the child getting to play soccer, but it's also built community amongst the parents. And so that's a whole nother thing. Our CP soccer where we live also allows some siblings to come in and play. They never like to see kids on the sidelines. So, it's a great opportunity and it's a great learning lesson for even siblings. So definitely consult with your local CP soccer team, because I think it depends on the area and what they're doing. I know we're actually splitting so that splitting the teams for people who want to be, some of the kids who want to be more competitive, but then still keeping the more fun activities for like the younger kiddos. And so just 2 different levels as well. So something to consider.
Okay, that sounds like that might be more of a localized conversation. So if anybody is interested, you should reach out to your CP soccer chapter in your state or wherever's nearby to you. The next question I have is from Maria Vaesca, but I believe she might have already left the meeting. So Maria, if you're still here, please, raise your hand, come off mute. Otherwise, I'll go to the next question. I know there are a few more and we want to make sure that we can cover those. So bear with me a minute as I get to those. Okay, are there any tips for parents with kids who have mobility challenges as well? Are there parents with kids who have a one-on-one in school and for mobility and safety, and maybe tips on navigating this with camps? That might apply to a lot of the panelists, and it might be just in varying degrees. So I didn't know if anybody, any of the parents here had a child with a one-on-one support in school.
We don't have one-on-one support at our school, but there are definitely some accommodations and some times during the day when she needs more support, like going up and down the stairs. Thinking about when she has to go to the nurse's office, which is 3 flights down, all of those different considerations. And that's a conversation that we have with school, and you would do that at camps as well, about whether they can accommodate your child and be able to get them safely from point A to point B. Obviously, that's going to be a conversation you want to have in advance of enrolling a child in any sort of camp.
Yeah, Paul, we see that you have your hand raised, and you had mentioned, I think you had actually responded in the chat as well too, but we'd like to hear from you.
Well, I can say that we have this has been a real issue for us. Our school district will provide one-to-one aids for ESY programs, but we were unable to find funding through the school district to get a one-on-one aid paid for at a campus not run by the school district. So we've, in the past have worked closely with camp counselors and camp directors to kind of make clear that, the kind of support that our child would need, but it's really been hit or miss if it's outside the school district in our experience. And I think that's not to say that other school districts wouldn't work differently, but I think, if our experience is anything to go by, it's the ESY programs where you're going to get most luck getting like an actual one-to-one aid.
I'll just add that, like Mass Audubon, the camp that I was mentioning, Drumlin Farm, is quite inclusive, and there are definitely families that bring a one-on-one aid, but I believe it's funded by the family privately, but they're able to integrate kids who have a one-on-one aid. And the other thing that this topic brings up is, which some of us touched on, is sort of what and how much to disclose to the camp about your child's disability. So especially as kids get older, they may want to be in charge of their own private information and how that's shared with campers, with counselors. And, if it's about an AFO, as Gretchen was mentioning, or if it's about safety for when a one-on-one is needed for safety or to access the activities, then it's mandatory to disclose. But there are other situations where maybe it's not mandatory. And then it really becomes a family conversation about what do we want to say and how much. And I just wanted to name that because I think it's important to the children to not necessarily get labeled, but to have an opportunity to be included in the whole camp experience. Patty, I'm going to pass it to you.
Patty, we can't hear you if you are speaking.
What about now?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. So thank you to all the panelists and the families that are attending, and I really find this very, very helpful. I wanted to highlight 2 things, like beyond those activities camps and research camps that are specifically designed for kids with stroke and hemiparesis. I would say never assume that the people running the camp cannot do something for your child. or know something that your child will need. So I think it came up several times, the chess guys speaking about it. But what I find is in the aim of also looking for inclusivity, okay? Not just the camps that are completely adapted, but those that are not, and having the kids experience. I love what Jordan, when you said the rules camp versus the camp that is fun. So to access those fun camps, I do think it will take younger kids, the conversation between you and the people that run the camp. These people love children. They're doing this because they really want to help. And I think the business model is not just to make money or anything like that. So if you could bring up exactly what you think your child needs, they will be very honest in what they can provide and not. And if you give them enough advance, so you're not talking the day of enrollment, that's what I'm trying to say. If you're talking to them weeks ahead of enrollment, they may be able to even tap on resources themselves to bring you the 101, to have more volunteers available to a specific session when changing, when getting in and out of the pool, or ambulating for long distances. Because these people really love working with kids and try to make it work. Not everybody, but there are many out there that we don't even talk to them that could take our kids and have them have a wonderful experience. For older kids, and I don't know where to put that age, but I would say definitely any kid older than 9, 10. What Mara was saying about having a conversation about what exactly they think they need and what also they need, and then the disclosures, and then going to that conversation that I'm talking about for the non-specific CP camps or research camps, and then going with them in what you want to be disclosing and having them receive help. But I know it's a lot of work, but I think it's absolutely worth it to ask even camps that you don't think they have anything for kids with disabilities.
And I would just add as well too, thinking about your child's inclusion in a community activity, there are some degree of protections through the Americans with Disabilities Act, and the opportunity to request reasonable accommodations for your child to participate. And again, that can be a conversation you can have with the community program and their capacity to do so. They may be flexible into exploring. That might be a potential area of growth for them. Just another kind of piece of the advocacy hat to consider as well too. And I put a resource in that speaks a little bit to that. So, Catherine, I see you have your hand raised.
Yes, hi. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thanks.
I just wanted to mention a personal experience with my son Payson. One of his godparents had very generously offered to pay for a camp experience for him, which he'd never had since his strokes. He had them every summer during pre-life, but at 9 he had his strokes, and since then he hadn't had any experience. And the camp that was chosen, I had to notify them in the intake, in the application, that my son had a stroke syndrome, because there are protocols that go with him where he goes. No, but he acts, walks, talks, and for the most part seems, together. But what happened was he was put on the bus to go to camp, and then I got calls that afternoon from the nurse and staff saying that they just reviewed his paperwork and that they're not going to be able to have him at the camp. So I said, what do you mean? He's already left on your bus. And that would mean someone has to go stop the bus, pick him up, bring him back home. And so I said, please speak with a doctor about this. And they finally approved him to go with his condition, but they wouldn't let him do anything. He did archery, which was fabulous, but he wasn't allowed to swim and jump in the water from the float in the lake when there were other kids there. It was highly restrictive. So I couldn't not disclose, but it did dampen his experience of camp. It was a regular camp. It wasn't a special needs camp. And I just wanted to mention that it can be difficult because imagine just having them to stop the bus on the highway and take your son. I mean, it was very difficult. but he got through it, and it was so great to know that he was around campers out in the woods in Maine. And yes, they thought he had to go everywhere by golf cart, until I called and said, no, he doesn't need to do that, because they're concerned. It brings a lot of fear and liability issues, which I've often had to sign liability, that I'll assume liability for anything that happens to my child. But I just wanted to mention that there's a lot to look into, and it's also a very personal decision depending on the circumstance.
Thanks, Catherine. Yeah, there can be a lot of conversations that might need to happen once the paperwork is filled out, and sometimes camp staff doesn't come together until literally camp is happening or shortly before that, and there's a lot of things to adjust to. So to have some degree of vigilance if there's any questions or concerns. So in going back to the questions in the chat, we had a few for Fight Camp. Meredith and Jordan asked questions. One was what the minimal age is 6 for Fight Camp, and the child is 5 with a September birthday. Is there any possibility for this year, or would that be for next year? And then is Fight Camp fit for kids who speak English only? And I defer to Francesca to those.
Yes, thanks, Bonnie. I also take the opportunity to answer to what Maria, the lady who has left, was asking, because it connects with the other two questions. When we try to set up the recruitment criteria, we thought about the age from 6 years old to 13 years old, because this makes sense in terms of ability for sport activities. So starting from 6-year-olds, they are able to catch the ball with 2 hands. They are able to practice for real some sports, some adaptive sports. So that was the minimum threshold, but for sure it's something that we can assess together. So we're not so strict on this. And what we understood during the years is that a 6-year-old can be together in terms of a level of activity or level of competition or type of goals that we fix that they need to achieve during the week with a 15-year-old. So we usually split the groups, we divide the group in two, the ones from 6 to 10 and to 10 to 13. So for those who were asking for older guys, I would recommend to find a similar audience, a similar target group for them, because it could be really hard when you are in an intensive camp for 1 week doing activities based on goals to achieve, having children of different age. The other thing that I learned is about swimming, that among all the different type of sports that we tested, we also we wanted to test swimming, but in terms of the way how swimming is taught, it's really hard to make it intensive. So for 1 week, even because children are starting from different level of swimming, so it would be hard to have a kind of criteria for having children in this type of camps. The other question was about the language. For us, no problem at all about the language. I think it is an opportunity. We also tested these years the kids who went to US. They barely spoke a few words of English, but it was a chance for them to learn new, and so no problem at all in terms of social relationships. So I think that language is it's not a barrier. This year, for example, in Italy, we piloted for the first time the esports, all the video games, and there were children who were some who were not able to speak or even in Italian. who had a hard time on finding the way to play, but no barrier at all to collaborate and to enjoy the camp. So
Great. That's good news, Francesca. Thank you. I don't see any other questions in the chat. So if I've missed a question that anyone had put there, feel free to raise your hand and come off mute. We appreciate everyone.
Jordan?
Oh, yes. Hi. Thank you for answering that question, Francesca. And I just looked at your dates, and unfortunately, it is the same time as an annual family vacation trip for us at a YMCA family camp. And that brings me to the point where, as much as I want to impose on my child, like, this would be so good for you. We've heard such good things about, your camp has actually been on my radar since Mara has ever mentioned it. And I have found opportunities that would be such great fits, like therapeutically, so like amazing. And I say it to him, and it coincides with that camp. He says, no, I don't want to miss it. I said, do you really like it? Like, really, like, and I have to like sit on my entire being to let him decide that no, he would rather, some other part of camp. I also wanted to mention, I put in the chat, like, one of the sailing camps I sent our kids to that was inclusive, has an adaptive program in Fleet. So you might have like people, any folks with mobility issues might have more luck or aids there when they're already set up for it. And then when, Dr. Mussolino talked about kind of diligencing whether some more recreation camps could be a fit. I was thinking, yeah, I think it's pretty, like, it was pretty telling just from like a 10-minute conversation with like the organizations, like leaders or owners, like how they react to like my concerns or questions. It's like, yep, we've seen the movie before, no problem. We accept all kids of different abilities, and here's how we deal with it, and here's how we're staffed. And staffing ratio is really important. So like we had an instructor who we knew for tennis who my son had done great group tennis lessons for, but in the camp format, they had a much higher student to staffing ratio, and that changed the dynamics significantly. And I also sometimes put my son, if this is his interest, like rock music or tennis or swimming, in the group class in the spring or throughout the school year, so he knows the instructor and what's up, and they know him, and then see whether they would recommend him and it would be a good fit for the summer. And I also have often actually asked for a half-day option versus the whole full day, because he tires more easily, and that shows up in more irritability and harder self-regulation. And the last thing I would say is, there was a comment about like how soccer is not, for CP, soccer may not be a fit, your kid doesn't like soccer. So my son really didn't like soccer and still doesn't really like soccer. He always attributed to his sister sport. He's like, I'm more into tennis. I hate soccer. I hate the running around. I can never get, like, I don't know when to use my hands. I can't, like, definitely not. But the summer camp for rules camp got so bad, and then his sister went to CP soccer camp, that we did CP soccer camp like really quickly. We went to New York, Boston to New York. And 2 days later, I said, oh, Orion, like, what changed your mind about soccer camp? And he said, well, I knew he was like really miserable at the rules camp. And he said, well, I saw my sister had Gatorade every day when she went to soccer camp. And I think that when I go to soccer camp, I'm going to have Gatorade. And sure enough, there was Gatorade. And then he still doesn't love soccer, but he liked the camp. And he found out he liked playing goalie in defense because there was less running around. And I also really love that it was a wide age range, just like your camp, Francesca. It's like 6 to 15, because I often find that the social connections are not what I predict. I have such hubris. I always think I can like predict everything. But anyway, like, it's not predictable. Like, not necessarily. It's like third grader to third grader. It's like he actually really bonded with a 14, 15-year-old who has like probably more maturity to like deal with his shenanigans. And he also really liked being with younger kids because he finds more of a connection, you know, like it's that wide age range. I think it's actually more natural for human beings in general as social creatures, but that's something I look for in camp too.
Thanks, Jordan. I wanted to go back to another topic, which is about Bonnie had posted a link to ADA resources. So just like our wider society has a long way to go with inclusion and accessibility, we as parents are quite powerful in our ability to advocate for that access for our children. So we know of a family that's in our community here that sent their child to the one of the Mass Audubon camps and had a great experience, and also to a Girl Scout camp where there was not such a great experience. And through some advocacy, they were able to get the Girl Scout camps to open up and be more accessible to a child who was going between a wheelchair and walking. So the child could walk for short distances, but needed the backup support of the wheelchair, not necessarily a one-on-one aid situation, but needed the camp to be able to offer that flexibility. And legally, the camp has to do that, right? But maybe the camp has to come into 2023 to actually do that. And sometimes it takes speaking up and writing a letter or taking other action. So I just want to remind parents that you're very powerful. And if you're paving the way for your child, you likely are paving the way for many other children.
I would also love to put the shout out to anybody who wants to develop more camps, like a cooking camp, a gaming camp, like a martial arts camp, like any of these functional camps. It's like that would be so fun. Mara, did you want me to share anything about the spreadsheet that you put in the chat?
Sure.
Sure. So there were two Google spreadsheets. One is a Massachusetts like adaptive activities and camps one. And what happened was I just started taking notes on what I had heard just to file away. And it was from like the online social group for kids with hemiplegia. A lot of it was from the CPAC chatter in my own city. And then I thought, well, I'm already taking all these notes. It's like 20, 30 lines. Why don't I just make it public and publicly editable? So I sent it around to my city's CPAC group. People added their own stuff, edited stuff like that. The Massachusetts hemiplegia social groups sent it to Dr. Mussolino in the stroke clinic, our pediatrician's office, who then sent it around to all the other providers and said, this is so helpful because we actually get a lot of questions of like what specific programs, and we don't know how to answer those. So like now we have like, a good parent driven reference. And then the second sheet is an open shell of if you would like to create it for your own community. Because I just think, sharing information, why reinvent the wheel, right? And I think a lot of people are afraid of making like information publicly editable because things will get messed up. And it is true, it could, but I'll tell you, I only check this maybe a couple times a year when I'm adding or updating things when it occurs to me. And only one time in 3 or 4 years has somebody really screwed up the formatting inadvertently, and I had to spend about 20 minutes fixing it, which is pretty easy with the Google spreadsheet history.
Great, Jordan. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, that's definitely useful to see it laid out, organized the way you have it. So if there are any other questions, now would be the time. I appreciate everyone staying as long as you have. This has been a great opportunity to talk more about camps and the needs of our children and how to connect to what is helpful and useful for them.
I want to again thank all the preparation and all the speakers and all the people running these camps. And I do want to put a shout out for anyone that watches this video. There's going to be a handout also on the YouTube channel and the YGSA website for the resources we've been discussing and they've been sharing. We, the physicians seeing the kids in the clinic, have no idea what to tell families in regard with camp, except for those that are very close to us or have heard about it, or the research camps. So you may want to poke your clinicians if you have a good relationship with them and let them know the resources out there so they can spread the word and the families can find themselves to these videos and other resources that are in entities and associations that have been posted here, and they're going to be available on the handout. That way, also from their clinics, families can get more help for now and for the summers, which are beautiful and challenging for all families with young kids. I really appreciate and I hope to see you guys on the next webinar. And I think we should start shouting that we're also prepping for our in-person Play to Thrive in May. So you'll hear more as we approach the date, but get ready for, again, coming together to play together.
Thanks, everybody. Have a
Thank
great
you.
weekend.
Bye. Ciao.
Bye-bye. Take care, everyone.